We were at Hood de Vries. Mr. Nevinson, his wife Nell, his daughter Jessie, and I. All of us, except Mrs. Nevinson, were hearing a flute, and we had come around to accepting that we were victims of the death will of Meneer Voerman, a Dutchman who lost his family during the revolt of the slaves in Berbice in 1763. Mr. Nevinson had asked me to go to Hood de Vries to paint some pictures, which he said were intended to adorn the walls of the company's head office in New Amsterdam. Later, I was to learn that he had used that as an excuse to get me there. He really wanted company, for he realized that odd things were beginning to happen as a result of his touching the manuscript. The manuscript a man named Patois had left him. At least one person had died after touching it, or so the evidence seemed to indicate. It was Matilda, Patois's woman. She had examined the manuscript before passing it on to Mr. Nevinson. Soon she was claiming that she was hearing a flute, and that she was seeing a man who was calling her to her death. When her body was found, it was found branded with a mark in the likeness of a flute. Mr. Nevinson later said he saw a spectral figure, and he felt a strong compulsion to follow it when it appeared. Now I was copying Meneer Voerman's words from the manuscript into my diary. I am leaving this manuscript in this canister in a niche in the brickwork at the brink of this waterhole, and God help him who may find it and lay his hand upon this parchment. He shall either join me in my wandering trouble through these shadows where here on earth I am, and in death also shall be a prisoner of unnameable presences, or shall release both himself and me by finding my bones and my flute, and giving them a Christian burial. That was the terrible threat that led to the story I'm telling. The story of my bones and my flute. For a long while after I had copied it into my diary, I sat contemplating this strange document of Meneer Voerman's. There seemed little doubt that he was either mad or a man who practiced witchcraft or demonology. How else could one construe such phrases as a prisoner of unnameable presences and undesirable presences begin to roam? Could it be that he used to attempt to attract to himself evil entities? Whatever it was, he must certainly have been a superstitious fellow, for his instructions said clearly that the seeker after his bones and flute must take care not to walk on the left side of this track after 4 in the afternoon. For a plantation owner, he must have been unusual. And what part could the flute have played in his activities? It seemed certain that he must have placed some great importance upon it. Or why should he request that it be buried along with his bones? Could his hobby have been music? Did he specialize in the flute? But even so, why go so far as to curse anyone who should touch the parchment? And why the insistence on the burial of his bones and his flute with Christian rites? Could it be that he had repented at the last moment of dabbling in devilry, but with death facing him, knew that it was too late to be freed of the evil influences which had made him a prisoner? For it goes without saying that had he been captured and murdered by the Negro slaves, he definitely could not have hoped to have been given a Christian burial. The slaves were heathens. Was this why he had made it a condition that the finder of the manuscript should not be left in peace until he had unearthed bones and flute, and had them reburied according to the rites of the church? I was still toying with this interpretation when I heard soft footsteps behind me. I was in the eastern veranda, and Jessie came up and asked me what I was doing. "Writing up my diary," I told her, deftly slipping the manuscript between the leaves of the diary, which happened to be one of these large foolscap-size Charles Letts, and lent itself admirably to the concealment of sheets of paper. "And what of yourself? What did you read?" I asked her. "Oh, nothing much," she replied, drawing herself up on the rail of the veranda. Poised there in a half-sitting, half-standing attitude, she looked across at the sawmill and remarked, "They've finished work for the day at the mill. It's after 4, isn't it?" "Yes," I said. To tell the truth, I'd hardly noticed that the sawmill had stopped working. We heard slow footsteps on the southern veranda and saw her father appear. He was smoking his pipe and had a thoughtful air. He gave us a glance and then paused and began to stare idly across at the sawmill. Jessie tapped her foot lightly against the balusters. I could not help smiling to myself as I reflected upon the oddness of civilized human conduct. Without saying a word to each other, we all three knew well what was the burden of each other's thoughts. We were aware of the expectancy that dwelt behind our outward semblance of calm. But as though by some silently mutual pact, we refrained from uttering the thought that hovered so tremulously within our ken. Our civilized inhibitions were such that we simply had to remain silent and pretend an equanimity we were far from feeling. Yes, the day had advanced. The sun was low in the west. In another hour or so, it would be shimmering reddish at the ragged-edged top of the jungle on the opposite bank, and then, within a few more minutes, would be gone, leaving behind it for a while a cluster of pink and mauve fans of light that would gently melt into the clear blue of the sky as the leafy chill threads of night began to weave their funereal pattern over the scene. So vividly did I envisage it, that it might already have been happening. I seemed to have the notion that I had projected my being through time and was sitting now on the front stairs, watching the river and the sunset. On the silent air came the voice of one of the labourers in a snatch of song, and the sound to me seemed to become one with my reflection on the illusion of having travelled ahead an hour or two in time. I had the sensation that I was hearing that voice at 6 o'clock, and not at 4:30, that I had succeeded in skipping the gap between now and then. Had anything unusual happened during the gap? Any nerve shaking? I had to jerk myself to dispel the illusion, and Jessie glanced at me and giggled. "What's wrong with you?" she asked. "What are you shivering like that for?" "Shivering? I never shivered." I yawned elaborately, self-conscious, and leaning back, began to whistle. Jessie laughed. "What's the sudden whistling for?" "Can't I even whistle?" I said. "Any objection?" She gave a grunt that was half a sigh, stretched in a way that betrayed that she, too, was feeling somewhat self-conscious, and said casually, "I think I'll go and have a shower and dress for the evening. Not that there's any need to dress specially in the bush, of course," she added, and went off humming softly to herself. In spite of our tenterhooks, however, 6 o'clock came, and the silence remained unbroken. At about 7, just before dinner, it happened. Jessie heard it within a few feet of her. She was in the dining room helping Timmykins to lay the table. Her father was in the sitting room trying to read a copy of Life and Letters I had lent him about half an hour before. I was smoking in a deck chair on the western veranda when I heard Jessie scream. I sat up at once, tilting my head, and I heard it, as on the night before, coming from a distance on the river. Mrs. Nevinson, who had been in the pantry engaged in making a mayonnaise sauce, rushed into the dining room to see what was the matter with Jessie. But in the meantime, Jessie had dashed into the sitting room to her father. I found her when I arrived there, clutching his arm and staring distractedly about the room. Mr. Nevinson, I noticed, did not glance about him in this uncontrolled fashion, but kept gazing towards where I stood at the western door. which, as I might have made clear before, was the door that gave onto the front veranda. To go down the front steps you had to pass through this door. Then Mrs. Nevinson appeared from the dining room, Timmykins behind her. "What's happened, Jessie? Are you all hearing the flute again?" Jessie nodded. "Yes, Mother, it's in here." "Milton, are you hearing it too?" I told her yes in a murmur. Abruptly I saw Mr. Nevinson shake off Jessie's hand and rise. There was deliberation rather than impatience in the action, and something trance-like and automatic in his demeanour impressed itself upon me. Jessie uttered a whimpering sound and murmured, "It's over there now, near the radio." She began to cringe off, moving towards her mother. Her father came straight towards me, but I could see that he was not looking at me, but past me at the doorway. "Where are you going, sir?" I asked him.
"Out of my way, Milton," he said.
It was a moment I never ever forgot. Never could forget. I had never seen Mr. Nevinson look like that before. I had never seen anybody look like that before. This was a moment, a terrifying moment, from my bones and my flute.